Imagine hearing one explosion after another for almost 90 minutes, with barely enough time to recover before the next strike lands. This is exactly what happened recently in Ukraine when Russia unleashed 8 powerful glide bombs in just 90 minutes during attacks on Zaporizhzhia region. Well, these strikes once again highlighted a weapon that is rapidly becoming one of Moscow's most effective battlefield tools now. And the most interesting thing is, these were not expensive cruise missiles or ballistic missiles. Instead, they were glide bombs, old Soviet-era bombs upgraded with wings and satellite guidance kits that allowed them to fly dozens of kilometers before hitting their targets. In fact, according to Ukrainian officials, Russia dropped around 8,300 glide bombs during July itself, the highest monthly total since the full-scale war began between the two nations. That staggering figures suggest Moscow is increasingly relying on these relatively cheap but devastating weapons to wear down Ukrainian defenses. So what exactly are glide bombs? Why have they become such a nightmare for Ukraine, and how has a war once dominated by FPV drones and trench warfare once again shifted in Russia's favor? So come with us as we answer all these questions in today's edition of From the News Desk. Well, Russia has intensified its use of glide bombs over the past several months, but the latest attack underlines just how central they have become to Moscow's strategy. During the recent strikes, Russian aircraft released 8 glide bombs within roughly 90 minutes, targeting Ukrainian positions and infrastructure. Unlike cruise missiles that require sophisticated propulsion systems, these bombs simply detach from aircraft before gliding towards their targets using fold-out wings and satellite navigation. Well, this tactic offers Russia several advantages. First, fighter aircraft such as Su-34 fullback can launch the bombs from well behind the front line, often outside the engagement range of many Ukrainian air defense systems. Second, Russia can launch multiple bombs during a single sortie, saturating an area with repeated strikes. And most importantly, glide bombs allow Moscow to inflict enormous damage without using expensive precision missiles that take longer to manufacture and are expensive. In fact, the latest numbers also reveal the scale of this very campaign. Ukraine says Russia released about 8,300 glide bombs in July itself, averaging more than 260 bombs every day. Even if exact wartime figures cannot be independently verified, multiple defense analysts agree that Russia's use of glide bomb has reached unprecedented levels. And the sheer volume of attacks is forcing Ukrainian troops to constantly relocate, making static defenses positions increasingly difficult to hold. Now, at first glance, a glide bomb looks like an ordinary gravity bomb. The difference lies in what is attached to it. Well, Russia fits older Soviet bombs with a universal planning and correction module, which is basically a package that includes folding wings and satellite guidance equipment. Once released from a high-flying aircraft, the wing deploy automatically. And then instead of falling straight down, the bomb guides towards its target, correcting its course using satellite navigation. Well, this dramatically extends its range while keeping Russian aircraft far away from Ukrainian air defenses. In fact, Russia primarily uses several variants like FAB-250, FAB-500, FAB-1500 and FAB-3000. Now, the number in the name roughly corresponds to the bomb's weight in kilograms. In fact, the FAB-500, weighing around 500 kilograms, remains one of the most commonly used models. The FAB-1500 weighs approximately 1.5 tons and carries hundreds of kilograms of explosives. Military experts say even fortified bunkers can collapse under its blast pressure. Now, another advantage is cost. Instead of manufacturing entirely new missiles worth hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, Russia simply upgrades bombs already sitting in Cold War stockpiles. In fact, analysts estimate the guidance kits are only a fraction of the cost of modern cruise missile, making them one of the most economical precision strike weapon available to Russia. Now, the destruction impact is enormous too. Beyond the blast itself, glide bombs generate powerful shock waves capable of collapsing trenches, damaging underground bunkers and shelters, and more worryingly, destroying buildings across a wide region where the impact has happened. For soldiers hiding in fixed positions, surviving repeated glide bomb attacks become extremely difficult. Now, to understand why glide bombs have become so important, it is important to look at how the battlefield evolved over the past 2 years. Well, Ukraine revolutionized modern warfare through the large use of first-person view or the FPV drones. These relatively inexpensive drones, often costing only a few $100s, were transformed into precision attack weapons capable of destroying tanks, artilleries, armed vehicles, and logistic convoys. In fact, thousands of FPV drones created a kill zone near the front line. In fact, Russian artillery positions became easier to detect and destroy, supply vehicles struggled to move safely, even heavily armored tanks became vulnerable to repeated drone attacks. And the result was a classic war of attrition. Instead of rapid territorial advances, both sides focused on exhausting each other's manpower and equipment. In fact, the widespread drone threat also reduced the effectiveness of traditional artillery. Every time a gun fired, it risked being spotted and attacked by a drone within minutes. In fact, military analysts argue this forced both armies to search for alternative ways to deliver heavy firepower. Well, that search helped bring glide bombs to the front line. Unlike artillery batteries stationed close to the front, aircraft launching glide bombs operate much farther away. And more interestingly, FPV drones simply cannot reach them. Now, Russia appears to have adapted its own strategy. Instead of relying solely on artillery, it increasingly uses aircraft to release massive glide bombs from safer distances. Well, this gives Moscow several operational advantages. Aircraft can strike hardened defensive positions before ground troops advance. Repeated glide bombs attacks can destroy bunkers, trenches, and common posts that would otherwise require prolonged artillery bombardment. Now comes the most important impact, psychological, which is equally significant. Unlike drone carrying relatively small explosive charges, glide bombs deliver hundreds of kilograms of explosives in a single strike. Experts note that while FPV drones excel at destroying individual vehicles or equipment, they simply cannot match the destructive power of a 250 kilogram, 500 kilogram, or even a 1500 kilogram aerial bomb. In fact, Russia has also continued improving the UMPK guidance kits by extending range and enhancing resistance to electronic warfare, making interception more difficult in many cases. Well, for Ukraine, the challenge is enormous now. The most effective way to stop glide bomb is not to intercept the bombs themselves, but to destroy the aircraft before release. Well, a task that requires long-range air defense systems and modern fighter aircrafts. And until that capability expands, Russia is likely to continue exploiting glide bombs as a key battlefield advantage. The war, therefore, appears to be entering another phase. And at the end, after years in which drones transformed combat and slowed offensive operations, glide bombs are allowing Russia to reintroduce large-scale area firepower at relatively low cost. Now, whether Ukraine can adapt once again, which they have done repeatedly throughout this very conflict, may determine how the next chapter of this very war unfolds. Well, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of From the News Desk. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm Yash Goyal signing off for Times Now Digital. Until next time, take care and keep watching this space for more such videos.